Do you know why dragons fear rabbits? Let me tell you the story. This is the year of the dragon coming up, and the relationship between rabbits and dragons actually is a very important one. Not because the dragon year is following on the rabbit year, yes, that is part of the story, but let me tell you the whole thing. Let's start from the beginning. First of all, what are dragons? When we look at the Chinese culture, you see that the dragons are considered to be very powerful beings. They are seen as the powers of nature. So when you look at the landscape and you are looking at the different things in the landscape, like the mountain ridges or the rivers or the valleys, all these kind of things, they are usually related to dragons. At the moment when you are walking through the landscape, you're walking alongside the bodies of the dragons which are asleep in the landscape. Everywhere in China they find these eggs, these crystal eggs. You cut them open and sometimes something comes out, and these are called dragon eggs. They are not real dragon eggs, but they're just called like that. They're stones. There's no dragons flying out like in the fairy tales. I wish. That would be really cool. But these dragons, they are very important powers, and they're being hailed in the form of clouds and in the form of mountain ridges and rivers going through the landscape. And when you do practice feng shui like I do, then at that moment you are enhancing the powers of the dragons for the benefit of something. In the past, feng shui was used mainly to empower a family to become more famous. And this is also what you see inside the dragon in astrology. You see that the dragon is an instrument of power, and this is what we're going to investigate. First of all, going back to feng shui. At the moment when you are walking through a landscape, this is called, for feng shui purposes, this is called walking the dragon lines. When you're walking the dragon lines, you can learn how to follow the power lines of the landscape and see where they are going to. There's a very important dragon line going all the way from North America, starting in Canada, and all the way going to Chile. And this is a very long distance. These are actually two dragons that are pointing their nose to each other. So you can imagine how that is. They can become enemies, they can become friends, and so on. So this is just a power line with a huge potential. It just has to be explored. There are smaller power lines, of course, everywhere in the world. Where we talk about the Chinese history, where feng shui and also Chinese astrology, of course, comes from, then at that moment we talk about dragon lines in smaller and larger relationships. And the smaller relationships especially is the family of dragons. And the family of dragons attracts cloud dragons. When we are performing Tai Chi Chuan, we are making dragon moves. And when we do cloud hands, this is not a dragon. No, this is not a dragon, but this is a dragon, right? So in our Tai Chi Chuan, the dragons are actually much stronger than what you normally do. The small hand here, this is for old people and for people who have nothing else to do except doing some gymnastics. It doesn't have no benefit, but it's not the benefit you're looking for in Tai Chi Chuan. So at the moment when we look at this feng shui perspective, you see that the dragons are elements of power. In the Chinese horoscope, and this is now the coming year is the dragon year, you can see that people look at the dragon in that perspective. But there's more to the dragon, because the dragon is also found in the form of bones, and these bones were used in the pre-classical times to do what is called scapulancy. And in the scapulancy they were burning holes inside the bones, and through the burning of these holes they were able to read it as a sort of script. And this is related to the history of the god Fu Si. And in the script they could read the future, and this future was then of the country, and it was also of the emperor and his family. Because the fortunes of the emperor meant the fortunes of the country, because the emperor is the son of heaven, the son of the dragon. In that sense, you can really see the importance of the dragon, and also therefore only the emperor was allowed to wear the symbol of the dragon on his clothing. In other situations that was not allowed. You see in Hong Kong, you see, and also in China nowadays, you see several temples. They have dragons. These dragons are only there with permission of the emperor, and only after the emperors were eliminated, then at that moment the symbol of the dragon was being freely used for all kind of purposes. So you see that over time the symbol of the dragon has always been very important and has been made very selective. Which brings me also to another important relationship, namely that's the relationship between the dragon and the phoenix. This is like the yin and the yang situation, where the phoenix is the yin and the dragon is the yang, because the dragon is the symbol of masculinity and power, while the yin is the symbol of power also, but a female power. And the female power is in the form of the emperor and the empress, and the emperor and the empress, they were both together important influences on the history of China, because the empress, of course, raised the children of the empire. In China, they didn't have male and female genders, they had patriarch and matriarch genders. So that means that you were a man, as a man you were a father. If you were not a father, you were a child. You were a male child or a female child, but that was not as important. In fact, in all the classical texts that I so far explained, they usually call you a child until you are at a particular age or particular kind of quality or function. And as a female, you were a mother if you were to be mature, and in that sense you were able to fulfill your role in society. So male and female as genders didn't really exist before the influence of the West on Chinese culture. In this relationship between the phoenix and the dragon, you can see that the yin and the yang, they are just like with the phoenix and the dragon, they are opposing seemingly, but in fact they are interrelated and they need each other. So the emperor and the empress, they need each other. So everybody always looking at the emperor when they're looking at Chinese history, but the emperor was never anything without the empress. And there were some very powerful empresses over time that were really stronger than the emperor itself. And sometimes when an emperor would die, an empress would take over and they would rule the country for a while, usually to be shunned afterwards, because China for a long time was a very much male dominated society, and in this male dominated society the importance of women was very much degraded, you can say. And the original matriarchy of Chinese culture gradually became a patriarchy, where the patriarch was the ruler of the family, so they were the emperor. Brings me to the rabbit again. The rabbit is of course the year that precedes the dragon, and they have a very special relationship. The dragon and the rabbit, they are usually very much into each other, not like lovers per se or something like this, although that is not impossible, but more in the sense that they have a very strong bond with each other. And you see of course this always with two signs that are following up on each other, like the rabbit and the tiger also have an intense relationship, and the tiger and the ox also have, and the ox and the rat also have, and the ox, yeah, I already mentioned that. And but in this case this is important for us entering the dragon year, because the rabbit is frightening the dragon a little bit. The dragon as a symbol for the year and an indicator for human behavior, because Chinese astrology is very much a behaviorist science. The dragon moves in all directions, right? This is very important. It moves in all directions because it likes to show off its power, and it also likes to be independent, and it likes to be appearing very strong and dominant and so on. While in fact, of course, dragons have soft underbellies, and we forget that dragons have many different kind of faces as a result of the behavior of the dragon. And the thing is that the soft underbelly is the need also for having somebody they can trust, and they can normally trust themselves, but dragons tend to trust rabbits, and as a result of that they can also respond very immature is maybe not the right word, but they can respond very unexpected towards the rabbit when they find themselves too vulnerable. So this is the important thing of it. The rabbit, namely because of its sensitivity and its innate fears of change, and I happen to be a rabbit, and I happen to be not a very fantastic rabbit, because a lot of influences depend of course also on other signs, but at the moment when you are a rabbit, rabbits in general in nature also, they are food for almost everything, so it's easy to victimize rabbits in that sense. And at the moment when you see the rabbit, you see that it is frightened for a lot of things, but it knows it doesn't need to frighten it doesn't have to be frightened of the dragon, because the dragon has this soft spot for the rabbit, but also that makes it very vulnerable. That means that the relationship between rabbit and dragon is actually a very special relationship. I have several dragons in my life. As a rabbit I feel very much pleased with that, but there's also certain kind of risks involved in these kind of relationships. And if you are a rabbit and you have dragon friends in your life, you will see that that is not always very easy. The problem is namely that the dragon likes to project power and influence and being special and so on, which they very often also are, but they are also trying to escape their own past. So every dragon is also running away from something, and the problem is that rabbits usually understand that what they are running away from, and the rabbit in that sense is the past, of course, so is representing the past, and that sensitivity is there because, as you know, if you have any kind of trauma in your life, you are always very sensitive of the past. The past always tries to catch up with you when you are tired and when you are lost a little bit. And the whole point of, for instance, the Dowland program is to help people to become fit enough so that the past cannot catch up on them, and that is partly because of observing dragons, but also other signs. And in that sense we can really say, okay, the dragon is a very special kind of creature, and the dragon year also will be a very special kind of year, especially because this is going to be a wood dragon, and wood dragons are pretty much peace loving, and at the moment when they are like that, then their negative sides are a little bit mitigated. So in this current time we can see there are a lot of potential problems going on, but the tendency in this year is to strive for peace. And at the moment when we see that there is going to be a strive for peace, that can come from unexpected corners, because dragons, as you know, they fly in all kind of directions, so this year also will shoot in all kind of directions to manifest itself. And sometimes then the change, the positive change that we are hoping for, might come from unexpected angles. So let's see how this year is going to run, of course. When we look at these things, then you can see there are of course also different kind of dragons. Usually the dragons, they come in fire dragon, wood dragon, of course wood dragon, fire dragon, earth dragon, metal dragon, and in the water dragon. And these dragons, they all have their own very specific things. Like for instance, the earth dragon is much more ego-centered. The fire dragon just has to act and has to do things, while the metal dragon is much more a constructor, in the sense that they like to set up projects and so on. The problem with the dragon is though that every time when they feel that the past is catching up on them, the past causes them also to walk away from projects and not finish them very easily. So that is a little bit of a problem with dragons. And so far as I have seen all the dragons in my life, they are confirming that image. Dragons have a dominating relationship with their environment and with the people around them, because they like to be the center point of things, and when they come into a room as a result of that, that is going to be attracting attention. And similar like that, the dragon year is like that. It's going to be a special year, so we have to count on the fact that there's going to be special things happening. But because the wood dragon tends to make peace, that might very well mean that particular processes which we now think of, like, oh, these are going to threaten world peace or anything like that, they might apparently become mitigated by the way how the year works out. On the environmental level, where a lot of people have a lot of fears too. It might very well be that the dragon year is a year where people come to a compromise and start realizing that they have to do something. We know, for instance, fossil fuels, largest part of the fossil fuels are being used by industry, and industry maybe will find a new standard through which they can reduce the use of fossil fuel, or maybe people start boycotting massively the use of particular kind of articles which require a lot of fossil fuels. That is including electrical cars. Sorry to say that. So maybe we're going to make a breakthrough in, say, hydrogen engines. Maybe there's going to be another kind of resource being developed and being marketed very quickly, which will help people a lot. Or maybe people are going to be more willing to give up on all kind of things which at this moment make their life very expensive. Like, for instance, houses, isolation can help very much to reduce energy cost. But if we can find a cheaper resource that you can just put in your house, like a hydrogen machine that can just warm up your house, then at that moment you don't need external heat anymore. You can just pour in water that makes hydrogen and then heats up your house. And that will resolve a lot of different kind of problems, assumingly so. So what will the dragon year then mean for you? Of course, there are 12 different kind of signs, and we go briefly through these different signs for this coming year. And when you look at the next symbol for the dragon, that's the dragon living in the dragon year. And dragons are envious of each other. So that means that a lot of dragons, they will try to catch more attention, maybe floating on the attention that the year already gets. So when people, for instance, have a tendency to become a healer or a therapist or a politician and so on, they might float a little bit on the activities of the year, and they tune in the time very much, and they try to be more dragony-like than the year actually at that moment is. At the moment when you are a snake, you have a tendency to adapt yourself to the dragon and to wait for your opportunity to get your things. So the snake has in a dragon year, or should take at least in a dragon year, a little bit of time to observe what the year is going to bring and then gradually make its plans. You should have made your plans, of course, already in the rabbit year. And the dragon should have made its plans in the rabbit year too, but dragons usually walk away for the past, and therefore they're sometimes very difficult to make long-term decisions. You see the potential in dragons very strong. For instance, my teacher Sifu Yaoswanda is a dragon. He was very often seen by his promoters as being a future Chinese emperor. This potential he might have had. I cannot judge that. I'm not Chinese enough in that sense, but he was seen as such, and he was also being praised as such. And that praise is for a dragon very often very important, because it makes them feel safe. The snake here, in that sense, knows to adapt to the dragon, so as a result of that the snake also will feel more safe. The horse, on the other hand, which is the next sign, is much more restless. And I know several horses, my daughters are horses for instance, but horses, they see themselves also as powerful creatures, which they are in a way, because also the horse, is very often seen as a symbol of power, but not in the same way as a dragon is. The horse is much more seen as a military tool when they are being broken to be used as a power. When they are in the wild, they're something maybe you can be afraid of a little bit, and they are relatively short in attention span. So as a result of that, they might make strange moves throughout the dragon year also because they can be a little bit skittish, and the dragon year, when moving in all kind of directions, they might feel a little bit complicated with that too. Although maybe horses will be more sensually attracted to people or objects in this dragon year. So we can have a look at that. Then the next one, the sheep, is usually relatively meek, and it is very much reliant on its own support. So in the time of the dragon year, it doesn't feel so much supported, but the dragon year is very easy in using the sheep. So when you are a sheep, that might be that you feel like this is really your year, you're really being supported very much, but you have to be careful that you're not going to be dragged along with things too much. Then Other animals like the dog, the monkey, the phoenix we already talked a little bit about, the pig, what else do we have, the rat and the ox, they have similar kind of issues. They very often, they can feel a little bit related to the dragon year, and they feel like things work their way, but it might actually not work their way that much. At the moment, when you look at, for instance, the dog is a very loyal creature. So in a world that is continuously shifting, the dog will get nervous and might actually come to wrong decisions. So they have to be very careful also. Then when you look at the monkey likewise is an animal which is floating through all kind of trees and going up and down and left and right, similar like the dragon does. It's much smaller though. It is there with a lot of little dragons because, as you know, birds are originating from dinosaurs, and the dinosaurs in our post historical view, genetic memory maybe, these were the dragons of the past, and they transformed in birds, and they might look very fragile, but birds can be pretty much fierce and, you know, dangerous in their own way. They have managed to survive a meteor impact which killed off all the other dinosaurs simply because of the fact that they could live from mostly seeds, which the other dragons didn't do. They ate other plants which died during that time, and they were very selective in their food. Also the meat eaters, they didn't survive because a lot of the big meat that they needed, they disappeared. That's the risk for the dragon, is that they eventually come into an area or a time when their resources are being exhausted, and at that moment they just crash. Or if they manage to limit themselves, they might adapt. Then at the moment when you look at the monkey, it compares itself very often with these birds because it can move so freely. But at the moment when it let go of the tree, then at that moment they are not that free anymore. So this is going to be a problem for them. At the moment when you look at the phoenix as a whole, the phoenix in that sense is very much in opposition, because it also tries to vie with the dragon for power. It tries to relate with the dragon, and as a result of that, it requires a lot of strategy to be able to do so. At the moment when you look at the strategy of the phoenix, they are appealing on parts which in the wood dragon year actually might really work. When you go further, you go look at the pig, for instance, and at that moment you see that the pig also, with its loyalty and its softness and its gentleness, tries to appeal on that soft part of the dragon. But the pig in that sense is, well, maybe having a little bit more difficulties also, because it does not deal very well, in spite of its intelligence and its sensitivity, with all the different kind of changes in the environment, similar like a dog, you can say, and also the sheep in a way. At the moment when, in that sense, the horse and the sheep are also a little bit like opposites of each other. Then if you look at the rat is an opportunistic sign, and with their good sense of taste and their politeness and their good manners and so on, in spite of all these details of what the rat seems to be doing good, it also takes its opportunity when it can. So the changes taken in the year might be very beneficial for rat business people or rat politicians to take more power and to become more important or gain influence or get treasures that they really like to have. The disadvantage of a rat is that usually their perspective is very narrow, while the dragons of course have a large overview. So the advice of a dragon for a rat can really help them build their strategies. Although the dragon year is not really a time for shared wealth and shared power in the year of the dragon. The dragons, they would like to keep everything to themselves. When you look at the ox, that's the worker. So if you're ox administrator somewhere, or you do something that you need discipline and just have to persist no matter what, even though the whole of society, the world around you changes all the time. When you keep on doing your job diligently, like taking care of other people or taking care of society or taking care of your family, anything like that, then at that moment you will not be bothered too much by all these things happening. the people who try to lead you, the people who try to guide you, the people who try to put you to work. These are just like mosquitoes around you. You can bear it and you can put up with it. So for you, it doesn't really matter that much. The tiger year, on the other hand, is a little bit different. You see my tiger here also. The tiger year is a little bit different because for the tiger year, the dragon is being seen a little bit as an enemy, in the sense that the dragon is making a little bit threatening moves, because as you know, cats can be pretty skittish, sudden moves that scare them, just similar like what a rabbit also has, that we already talked about before. In that sense, you can really see that this tiger, with all its sensitivities, does not adapt very well to a dragon year, so they might have some problems. If anybody of you hear yourself and see yourself say like, oh, this is a certain kind of risk maybe, and you want advice, then just don't hesitate. In Chinese astrology is giving a lot of different kind of opportunities to find solutions, especially the combination of feng shui, I Ching, and Ming Shu astrology at the same time. So getting back to this rabbit thing, this is something that is a theme in this program, of course, and there is a lot more about it to say, because rabbits, they dig holes. They come usually as the only sign from all the other animal signs. They're living a part of their life hiding underground and digging underground, and because of being underground, they can completely disappear from the view of a dragon. And I think that is part of the reason why a dragon is fascinated by rabbits, but also a little bit worried about rabbits, because these rabbits can all of a sudden show up at their belly and show them some of their sensitivities. On the other hand, rabbits usually are loyal friends to the dragons once they become befriended, so that is a very good thing. I think this is my story for today. I hope that this is going to help you for your understanding for the coming dragon year. I wish that you have a very nice time and that you are going to be able to understand the dragon a little bit better, but also that you understand the dragon year and what it can do for you. If you want to look up more about this, then just sign up for our Chinese New Year program. You will find the link below, and at the moment when you sign up for that, you get a whole overview of everything from how the Chinese New Year goes and how relationship with Taoism, ritual, and all kind of other things, how that is being developed. And I'm still busy working on this program, but you can already enter it and you can already read and watch movies about different animals, and it will be extended over time until we have like a full program. So once you pay for it, you make a donation or you do it for free, it doesn't really matter, you just sign up. Then at the moment when you sign up for it, you have access to it the rest of your life if you like, until you delete it or forget about it. And you will see that there's going to be regular updates at least once a year, but most likely more often, because every now and then I touch on a subject that relates to that. When you sign up for it, you also find access to all kind of courses and materials that are relevant for understanding more about these things, like for instance I Ching, feng shui, astrology, maybe for your professional training as a counselor, especially also when you want to do Ming Shu astrology counseling. I'm wishing you a very happy year, and I look forward to see you soon.